I'm D. Ghoshal, General Secretary of Healthy Climate Initiative. Good evening and a warm welcome to everyone joining us today on this significant occasion, World Environment Day. The theme of today's webinar, Beyond Awareness, Reimagining Climate Education for a Climate-Ready India, reflects a growing urgency to shift from passive understanding to proactive learning and action. In a world grappling with climate disruptions, education is not just a subject, it's a survival strategy. We are honored to have with us two global thought leaders whose contributions to environmental education and climate advocacy are truly unparalleled. Padma Shri Kartikeya Sarabhai, a pioneer in environmental education and the visionary founder of the Center for Environment Education, and Ms. Karuna Singh, Regional Director for Asia at artday.org, a dynamic force in scaling climate initiatives across continents. Their insights promise to inspire, challenge, and guide us in reimagining how we prepare our citizens, especially the young, for the climate realities ahead. It is now my pleasure to hand over the sessions to our esteemed moderator, Sri Returaj Phukan, a leading environmentalist and climate crusader who will take us through the rest of the evening. Over to you, Mr. Rituraj.
Thank you, Mr. Gosal. And once again, I welcome you all to this very important webinar on a very important day. It has been a long day, I am sure, for our esteemed speakers. And as you rightly mentioned, both are pioneers in the field. As you know, the modern environment movement started in 1970 with the Earth Day, and Earth Day Network did all the pioneering work. And to me, environment education started with CEE. So it's such an honor to have you both here. And the way we will go today is to have the opening talk, presentation, remarks by our speaker for 10, 15 minutes. And then we'll go over to the moderated questions. Shall we start with Karuna, ma'am?
Sure, very happy to be here and happy to be addressing a subject which is very close to my mind. I think that the time has come where we have to make a quantum leap forward based with a strong foundation on which we have our students standing of textbook education awareness building to one that is going to lead them to taking action, to being proactive, to being innovative and being stewards for the environment from this young age. Because no longer do we have elasticity of time to wait for them to grow into adulthood and then take on responsibility for the environment. So this shift is also encompassed in the Prime Minister's Mission Life initiative, which is a significant step towards a climate-ready India. So talking about this, I think the first thing we should do is to relate our education to real-life issues that specifically impact India, such as changing monsoon patterns. This year we have seen that the monsoons have come earlier in some parts of India. We have also seen, I'm in Calcutta, and we normally have something called the Kal Baishaks here quite regularly, but we haven't faced those, and instead we have had very warm weather. So we have to take into account these changes which are rapidly coming forward and direct the education to include these so that we see that the changing rainfall patterns, for instance, how are these going to affect the agriculture? How is it going to affect water availability? And we now are beyond the stage. She might want to mute her thing. So we are now beyond knowing that this is plastic. Plastic is now difficult to degrade, And coming to the sense of health, we are talking about the microplastics, how these are going to affect our health. It's still a very question, because we don't know exactly how. We have seen it in mother's milk, we've seen it in changing hormones in girls, we've seen it in other things, but we need to focus on this and see how it's going to do it. We have had our students learn about fuels, carbon emitting fuels, and how these release the greenhouse gases that pollute the air. But how is that going to affect our health? That is what we now have to shift to and see. Secondly, we need to localize education. For instance, students have learned about climate change and, the warming of the oceans. And we've learned about the mountains and how, the water is going to melt there. But does it make sense to teach students in Orissa about the glaciers melting? Uh, Rather, we should be teaching them about how the ocean currents are going to rise and vice versa. We have to do that. Thirdly, green economy is developing very rapidly. ILO is also predicting that there are going to be a lot of green jobs available. So our education should be directed to skill development of the students that are there. Fourthly, I really think we should move our education away from that gloom and doom, because we have experienced that often when we go to give lectures and we start talking about, do you know, the last 10 years have been the hottest, this is what has happened, this is what can happen, students start moving out. They really don't want to hear that anymore. So I think we should also look at the good things that have happened. We need to showcase these good things that have happened. For instance, India has now the third position in the world for the production of renewable energies of wind and solar. Why are we not telling our children this success that has come? Project Tiger has really put up our population of tigers by about 70%. We've added more. We've added more green spaces. We've extended producer responsibility for looking after stricter laws are there. I think that these should all be focused on, these should be showcased to children, and the children should be told that, see, these achievements have happened. Now you take it forward by multiplying them. So that's what I think is important, because otherwise children are just not interested in the environment anymore, because it is all gloom and doom for them. So maybe when some questions come up, I can give you some more thoughts.
Thank you for sharing these perspectives, Karuna ma'am. Uh, we will definitely want to elaborate more on the localized education and and perhaps the possibility of including environment conservation, climate education in things like current affairs and general knowledge lessons, if it is not already happening. And we also want to hear about the inclusion of climate education in the NDCs later, but that's perhaps a question that we'll come to. And uh, now moving on to Mr. Kartikera Sarabhai here, uh, who is the founder, once again to reiterate, the Center for Environment Education, and we invite him to deliver his opening address.
Thank you, Ruturaj, and wonderful to have Karuna ji here and all of you. Um, First of all, let me say, wish everyone on World Environment Day. It's the day when which we recommit ourselves. We remember what needs to be done throughout the year, and it's the day when we create a large number of awareness, but also many people take action. Our papers are full of it. and you go back to what World Environment Day was, the 5th of June was in 1972 when the first UN conference was held. Uh, that was the time when environment was not such a buzzword, not so much in people's minds, and only one prime minister turned up from all the invitation in the world, and that was, of course, the Prime Minister of India, Indira Gandhi, at that time. And that's when she mentioned that environment and solving the problems of poverty are really two sides of the same coin. You cannot save the environment without solving poverty issues, and nor can you solve poverty issues if you don't save the environment. And that particular interrelationship between development and environment has now then been the narrative going forward since that time. 92 was when the world put environment and development words together. It was environment and development. And then as we moved on, we started talking about sustainable development. So the words really came conscious. So today, I think largely that is the way it's understood. This particular World Environment Day has re emphasized this huge crisis which we are having with plastics and plastic pollution. The triple global crisis, as it's called, which is biodiversity loss, increased climate change, and pollution, all three of them are impacted by plastics. The making of plastic itself is involving fossil fuels and chemicals which go into the air and create greenhouse gases. Uh, the plastic which is going to the ocean, which, as many of you perhaps know, it's almost, they say, a truckload every minute that is going out. And the prediction is that by 2050, there'll be more weight of plastic in the oceans than the entire fish and other life forms. It's a terrifying thought, and you have these large islands of plastic all around. And Karunaji mentioned microplastics, which is all the ones we don't see. The ones we see is bad enough, but the ones we don't see, the one which is going into mother's milk, the mother's which is going to your brain, they say we already have one credit card equivalent of plastic already in most of us, and the impacts of that is going to be horrible. And then pollution itself. So the plastic which is going out are killing fish, killing birds, killing things. You have these terrible images of the intestines of these animals. In India, for instance, you will see almost at most waste dumps, you will see cattle and cows which we protect so well in this country, but we somehow don't take that protection to mean that we should not allow it to eat plastic. I think it's the same thing. If you really want to save these animals, you should really do something about it. So I think this sort of awareness creation, but as Rituraj, you rightly said, and Karunaji also, that a time has come where we are talking about action. We are no longer waiting for children to grow up and then do things, but take action while they are now. I should just say that way back in 2005, 20 years ago, when we were working in Hyderabad, India, little girls from St. Mary's School put their hand on their notebooks and called it the handprint. And I was curious. I didn't know what it really stood for. They said, you've been talking about the footprint, and as Karuna just said, that's the gloom part of it, the doom and gloom part of it. They said, why are we only talking about the footprint? Let's talk about the handprint. And the handprint really refers to what we can do. What are the positive actions which we can do even as children? And this was a fantastic thought, if you like. We launched it, Karuna, you will remember, in 2007 at the UNESCO the conference, Tbilisi Plus 30 conference in Ahmedabad. And now it's globally, people are using this word handprint, a word which started from a school in India and has gone globally as a concept and as a word of positive action. So both those points, Karuna, one is positivity and action as meant is represented in this whole concept of the handprint. Now, today, at least in India, the school syllabuses have been changed according to the new educational policy. New textbooks are being written, and I'm fortunate in the position of being there to write these textbooks as part of something called the curriculum area group for environmental education. So we are looking at it. As soon as I put this phone down, I'll go back to writing my chapter for class grade 5. And everything which you say gives a new idea that maybe we should include this aspect as well, because children are curious. One of the questions was that when should climate change be introduced? When should we even use that word climate change? Because we are writing grade 5, we are putting it in, but we recognize that not all the components of it are known at that stage. They don't know necessarily what photosynthesis. They don't know necessarily the difference between fossil fuel and others. They don't know necessarily, but should they not know it? And what I argued there was like we learn several shlokas when we are young children without really knowing what they mean. And I can tell you, even now, there are many which I know half the meaning of. And I hope in the next 10 years or so, I will actually know what they mean fully. But we know that that's the right thing to do. Why should you plant a tree? There's a campaign which is launched today, माँ के नाम एक पेड़ माँ के नाम, and through the Ministry of Education, they plan to plant 10 crore trees this year. They did 5 crores last year, and getting every child to plant and plant. This is symbolic in your mother's name because Mother Nature and Mother Earth, but it is really plant, and not only plant but take care of trees and plant indigenous trees, variety of things. Now, now that whole is again going to a movement in the school. So I think what we will see in India is that there is going to be a major shift in terms of at least all of us, including NCRT and others, being on a very similar wavelength. This is not the case in many countries. In many countries, including the US, some of you are there just now, it's a difficult fight because you're fighting the very concept of even doing it, you're fighting. At least in India, the decision makers today are supporting this. Major leads have been taken. And our Prime Minister in 2015 at the Paris COP did two very important things. One was that for the first time, the use of the word lifestyle in a United Nations draft was introduced. Till that time, people were completely opposed. The US especially was opposed, said Senior Bush said that you cannot bring in lifestyles. American lifestyles are not for negotiation. But we managed in the preamble to bring in the concept of lifestyles. It later went into Mission Life, and now eco clubs for Mission Lives is what they're doing in schools. So this whole concept of lifestyle. The other one was to launch a book which we prepared for them, which is called Parampara, the traditions. And what you find is that India, especially, but it's probably true of most traditional societies, have inherently been non wasteful. Inherently, they have been caring, they have been circular. I remember when our team from Ahmedabad, after the earthquake, went to Kashmir to rebuild, they found that under the living room was the room for the goats and sheep. So they were asked, why is this? So they said, so that the warmth of the goats and sheep doesn't go waste. It keeps the floor of our living room warm, to that extent that even the warmth should not get waste, let alone material things. But even that. So this is deeply ingrained in our. In Gujarat, for instance, you have extra rotis at night. You dehydrate them, convert them to khakra, and you don't need a fridge to store it. And there are traditions all over the world and all over India. So how do we strengthen them? I don't think there would be a single person in this webinar today whose kitchen won't have one bottle, which is a glass bottle washed and you store something else in it. It just inherently comes there. We are doing some work on textile recycling, and in Panipat is where textiles are brought in and remade into it. But they're saying we get very little from India because in India you will use it till the last possible life of that cloth, finally make it into a pocha, but you will still use it. So this is very much in it, and we need to strengthen. We should not feel like we are old-fashioned if we carry a bag when we go out to shop, a cloth bag. We used to do it. Everyone used to do it maybe 50, 60 years ago. Now we do it with pride, saying that this is the environmental reason, not just a traditional reason. And we must say no to anyone. If a shopkeeper offers plastic, we have to say no in many cases, use less and things. We also have a very interesting youth movement with the United Nations Environment Program and WWF called the Plastic Tide Turner Challenge, which provides, it's one of the world's largest such programs, providing youth leaders. And we were just 2 days ago looking at what they did. Some of the groups had, for instance, made a Bartan bank so that in their village, people who used to use plastic for weddings or in an urban area for birthday parties, instead of plastic, they can use metal and which can be washed. It's a small idea, but it's also a business idea. Others are cleaning up places which are already got plastic, or drives to make bags from things. So there's a lot of action which is coming, and it's really really positive. So I think let's look at that positive thing. But when you look at the positive things, we must not forget that there are people who are responsible. The climate justice angle, that India can't solve the problem themselves. The schools can't solve the problem themselves. There is a responsibility which industry has, responsibility which governments have, responsibility which the United Nations has, and we should be aware that this is a problem which has to be solved at the global level. It is a problem. Environmental education should prepare you to understand that yes, you should do the best you can, but you also have to ensure that the world does the best. And there is something, there is the common but differentiated responsibility, and several other concepts which are there. So I think in this webinar, when we move towards a circular economy, we work towards a no waste thing, we say no to plastics. We must remember that education, schools is very important, community mobilization very important, but also to go to our policymakers, go to the industries, see that they follow rules, and that when these kids who are today in school, when they become elder, when they become people in society, as we go towards a Viksit Bharat in 2047, Viksit Bharat does not have trash around. It does not have this, and it gives dignity to the Safai workers. It gives dignity to people who are part of the second half circle, where you go from waste to first products. They should get the same dignity and recognition as the people who start with oil and make your products get. They are all stars. They're big industrialists. But these other people on the other side of the economy are not today. But we must do to it. So thank you, Ritaraj. I might have spoken a little longer, but I thought these were some initial comments. Thank you.